Aloha, friends and family. Thought we'd go over what we read, some of what we read. Let's try to get a deeper understanding of what Lao Tzu is saying. So in verse 34, he says, "The great way is universal. It can apply to the left or the right. All beings depend on it for life. Even so, it does not take possession of them. It accomplishes its purpose but makes no claim for itself. It covers all creatures like the sky but does not dominate them. All things return to it as to their home, but it does not lord it over them. Thus it may be called great." So he's talking about the Tao here. And since the Tao is the great nameless thing, on a human level, we want to come up with a word. So the best word, I think, is consciousness. Right? So we could say at the beginning, the great way is universal. The great way of consciousness is universal. It can apply to the left or the right, meaning duality. So consciousness can see wholeness even if it's looking to the left or to the right. All beings depend on it for life. So you depend on consciousness for life, even though you may not know that, or even though there was a time you didn't know that. Even so, it does not take possession of them. So your consciousness is not going to possess you like some spirit. It's not going to take possession, let us say, of your avatar against your will. Does it possess the avatar too? Yes, it does. It's part of us. But it's not a dominating, overtaking type of thing. It's something we as within ourselves have to come into alignment with. So it accomplishes its purpose but makes no claim for itself. Your consciousness accomplished its purpose by integrating with your avatar, but it's not making any big claim for itself. Like, it's not trying to be separate from you and say, look at me, the higher self, look at me, the spirit. It waits for you, the avatar, the mind of your man. It waits for that to come into alignment. It's that old thing of inviting something in, even though it's already in. But see, when you don't know all this, it's not in alignment. So we're inviting it into alignment. It covers all creatures like the sky, but does not dominate them. All things return to it as to their home. Don't you feel more at home when you're in oneness, when you're in your consciousness, when you're vibing high? and can see the big picture as a whole. But it does not lord it over them, thus it may be called great. So the Tao is great. Your consciousness is great. You as the integrated, multidimensional self in present time awareness are great. This is a great revelation. This is a great truth. This is a great reality. This is a great knowing. This is a great moment. So then he goes on to say, the sage imitates this conduct. By not claiming greatness, the sage achieves greatness. In verse 35, he says, all men will come to him who keeps to the one. All men will come to him who keeps to the one, we might say truth, or the one knowing. They flock to him and receive no harm, for in him they find peace, security, and happiness. So as people come to remembrance and they find one of these lowly sages around, they're going to realize that the reason they're drawn is because they feel peace, they feel security, they feel happiness. And then hopefully they begin to cultivate all of it and integrate all of it within their own selves. And then they will be transmitters for the same peace, security, and happiness. Music and dining are passing pleasures, yet they cause people to stop. How bland and insipid are the things of this world when one compares them to the Tao. So true. When you look for it, there is nothing to see. When you listen for it, there is nothing to hear. When you use it, it cannot be exhausted. Consciousness. Source power. Verse 36, should you want to contain something, you must deliberately let it expand. Should you want to weaken something, you must deliberately let it grow strong. Should you want to eliminate something, you must deliberately allow it to flourish. Should you want to take something away, you must deliberately grant it access. The lesson here is called the wisdom of obscurity. The gentle outlasts the strong, the obscure outlasts the obvious. Let's examine that. Should you want to contain something, you must deliberately let it expand. Should you want to weaken something, you must deliberately let it grow strong. Should you want to eliminate something, you must deliberately allow it to flourish. Should you want to take something away, you must deliberately grant it access. This seems counterintuitive at first. So I think what he's saying is, let's go to, should you want to eliminate something, you must deliberately allow it to flourish. Let's take what we would call bad habits. If you want to eliminate a bad habit, you first deliberately allowed it to flourish. And then you came to know that it was a bad habit by letting it flourish. So now you know, in this scenario, now you would know, I want to eliminate this bad habit. I've let it flourish. I see what it's done. I see what it does. I see that it's no good for me. I have understanding now. I have experience now. I have knowing now. Now I can eliminate it. Should you want to take something away, you must deliberately grant it access. So you can't take something away that hasn't even arrived. Basically, that's what he's saying. If you want to take something away, first you had to let it arise or arrive. Verse 37, the Tao does nothing but leaves nothing undone. That's beautiful right there. That's beautiful. The Tao does nothing but leaves nothing undone. That's basically saying when you're in synchronicity, when you're in tune, when you're in alignment, when you're in balance, when you're in knowing, you don't really feel as though you're doing anything. Because all you're doing is just natural. Everything's a flow. And in that flow and in that synchronicity and in that balance and in that harmony, you didn't leave a bunch of things undone. So you don't have all these undone things that need to be finished or done or completed. Because you didn't co-create like that. You don't co-create that way when you're awakened. If powerful men could center themselves in it, the whole world would be transformed by itself in its natural rhythms. I don't take, when he says if powerful men, I don't take that to mean what the Matrix says is powerful men. He's saying powerful men in the sense that they know who they are. They've integrated the higher self. They've integrated their spirit. We could say they grounded their spirit. They grounded their spirit into their avatar, which makes them powerful. Now what about that? If they could center themselves in it. Heart is where the center is. So he's saying if powerful men could center themselves in their heart, the whole world would be transformed by itself in its natural rhythms. In other words, everything would come about beautifully and wonderfully and naturally in the natural rhythms of ebb and flow if everybody was transmitting through their heart chakras with their dualistic mind in accordance with the way of the heart, which is love. When life is simple, pretenses fall away. Our essential natures shine through. So our essential natures are what? Bliss. So if powerful men became heart-centered and transformed the world in its natural rhythms, pretenses would fall away and your natural nature of bliss would shine through. By not wanting, there is calm, and the world will straighten itself. When there is silence, one finds the anchor of the universe within oneself. So when you're not filled with all these desires and worldly things and distractions, then there's calm. Again, if you go within, just within your heart, where you don't have a bunch of wanting, you find there's calm. And you realize in that calmness, the world will straighten itself. And then silence falls. And in that silence, one finds the anchor of the universe within themselves. Verse 38. A truly good man is not aware of his goodness, and therefore good. A foolish man tries to be good, and is therefore not good. So this comes down to, the difference of an ego putting on an act or a conscious, transformed man just naturally being good. The good meaning he's grounded and rooted in love, centered. His co-creation comes from his heart, not from his egoic hands necessarily. We have tree work going on around here, so sorry about the sounds. The master does nothing, yet he leaves nothing undone. So earlier he said the Tao does nothing, yet leaves nothing undone. So the Tao is the master is the Tao. The ordinary man is always doing things, yet many more are left to be done. So the man that doesn't realize this, that doesn't know this, that doesn't have this understanding, he's always doing all kinds of things. And even though there's all kinds of things left yet to be done, it's a never-ending cycle of doing. The human, usually chasing things of the material world, distracted by the material world, not realizing that he was here to work on his consciousness. He was here to work on his spirit's growth. He was here to gain great understanding about the inner verse and not so much the outer verse. The highest virtue is to act without a sense of self. To modernize that, I would say the highest virtue is to act without a sense of selfish. The highest kindness is to give without condition. Okay, we all pretty much understand what that means. The highest justice is to see without preference. So if you're judging, judge without bias. Try to see as clearly as you can. When the Tao is lost, there is goodness. When goodness is lost, there is morality. When morality is lost, there is ritual. Ritual is the husk of true faith, the beginning of chaos. So I take that to mean when the Tao is lost, you've stepped backwards or down into goodness. Okay, there's great and then there's good. So you've stepped down to goodness. When goodness is lost, there is morality. So when you lose goodness, you take another step back or down, and now you have morality ruling you, ruling the mental man. When morality is lost, there is ritual. So the mental man has taken another step back or down and lost morality. Now he's got ritual. What is ritual? It's the husk of true faith. What is a husk? A shell, an empty shell, an old discarded shell. So ritual is the old discarded shell of true faith. True faith is rooted in knowing. And again, the knowing emanates out from the center of the conscious man. So ritual is the husk of true faith, the beginning of chaos. So ritual, we could also maybe add religion. Ritual and religion were the beginning of psychological, spiritual chaos. How do you get it back? How could you realign after falling to that condition? You would find your morality, you would then find your goodness, and your goodness would lead you back to the Tao, or consciousness, or truth. The great master follows his own nature and not the trappings of life. He stays with the fruit and not the fluff. He stays with the firm and not the flimsy. He stays with the true and not the false. Pretty self-explanatory there. These things from ancient times arise from one. So everything going back to ancient times all arose from the one. We could say the one consciousness, fractalized into many parts of consciousness, of which I am one and you are one. The sky is whole and clear, the earth is whole and firm, the spirit is whole and full. So the sky and the earth and the spirit are whole, and they have different aspects: clear, firm, and full. The 10,000 things are whole, and the country is upright. All these are in virtue of wholeness. In other words, if you want all that to be true, it would come about as a result of wholeness. Because division breaks all that up. When man interferes with the Tao, the sky becomes filthy. So when you interfere with the knowingness, with the oneness, with the ebb and flow emanating from source through your layers to your present moment, if that's interfered with, the sky becomes filthy. The earth becomes depleted. The equilibrium crumbles. Creatures become extinct. So don't interfere. Don't divide and disrupt the Tao, the flow of the love, the knowingness of the love, the power of the love. Because if we do, it becomes filthy, depleted, and it crumbles, and even can go extinct. Therefore, nobility is rooted in humility. Loftiness is based in lowliness. This is why noble people refer to themselves as alone, lacking, and unworthy. So again, we're not using the definition of the matrix for nobility here. Therefore, nobility is rooted in humility. So we think of nobility as great, and it is, but not in the context of the matrix. So a great man, a truly great man or woman, not according to matrix standards, is rooted in humility. So their humility is something that makes them great. Loftiness is based in lowliness. So they realize by staying humble, by staying grateful, by staying loving and in love, which is a lowliness, it's a humility, it's a recognition of something great, something truly great, which is, we could say here, the Tao. The Tao is the master. The master is the Tao. This is why noble people refer to themselves as alone, lacking, and unworthy. Now you got to remember, this was written before the Bible. This is written a long time ago. So let's try to modernize it a little bit. This is why he says noble people. I'm going to say, let's use that humility word that he used. This is why humble people feel as though they are alone, feel as though they might be lacking, and feel as though they might be unworthy. Not in a egoic sense. We're talking about an awakened person. An awakened person does feel alone. Didn't you feel alone when you first awakened, if you're awake? Didn't you maybe feel like you were lacking? Because if you're alone, you feel like you're lacking, right? You're lacking the ability to even communicate with another person because they're not going to understand the damn thing you're saying. You feel like, you think. And for a lot of people, that would be true. The pieces of a chariot are useless unless they work in accordance with the whole. So a chariot, I picture, attached to some horses. And if you want to move along down the road, all the pieces have to be working together. If you have a chariot seat sitting here and a horse standing over there and some reins hanging over here, you're not going to get on down the road in the chariot. The chariot has to be whole. A man's life brings nothing unless he lives in accordance with the whole. The whole what? Universe. So he's likening all the parts of our universe as being like parts of a chariot. All of them having to be assembled and functioning as a whole in order to work. So if you want to work, if I want to work, if we want to work and be our best version and have our best experience and co-create the best art, life and art are synonymous. They're the same thing. A man's life brings nothing unless he lives in accordance with the whole universe. Playing one's part in accordance with the universe is true humility. So it's not the pious religious people in their ego acting humble and acting like they're bowing down to the great master in the sky, etc., etc. But it's playing your part in accordance with the universe. That's what's truly humble. Because you're in alignment with truth. You're in alignment with that which is. And you're no longer in your duped, dualistic avatar mind. Truly, too much honor means no honor. It is not wise to shine like jade and resound like stone chimes. So, we don't want to bring too much honor and attention to humans. We don't want to raise them way up on pedestals like, they do the stars, so-called stars, because then they shine like jade. They're real flashy, shiny, glitzy, glamorous, distracting. Because when you listen to what comes forth, it says they resound like stone chimes. Have you ever heard stone chimes? What would stone chimes sound like? Nothing. It would be a dud. It would be a thud. It wouldn't ring out. It wouldn't emanate. It would just fall dead. It would just immediately be nothing. So we'll leave it there for today, my friends. Love and wholeness. Thank you for joining me in the garden. And we will see you again very soon, my beautiful family and friends.